I'll take you for a ride on the devil's ship. I'll take you for a ride where you sink or swim. Now come with me and let this story begin.
Radio legends, Terry and Ted.
Ah, shucks.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Legends. Come on.
Oh,
really?
you know it.
I prefer Icon.
We'll go with that icon. How you guys doing?
Good.
We couldn't be better, to be honest with you, Pantelis. Couldn't be better. Thank
It's
you
nice to
very
have you
much.
guys together.
It's nice to be together, isn't it, Ted?
It is, darling.
nice.
Sitting
Yes,
here
it
in front
is.
of microphones, talking to each other again, which we haven't done for 13 years. 2007.
I said to Ted yesterday, this is, our friendship has never wavered, even after we stopped working together. But sitting across from him is a special kind of kick.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing for a couple of days.
Yep.
Why did you guys stop working together? What's the story behind that?
Well, it starts with your departure from Showman in 2007.
Yeah, in 2007, we were having a heck of a run in the I call it the aughts, 2000 to 2007, and somewhere in there, I don't know what year it was, 2006 or 2007, a guy arrived who was running Showman and decided that. He decided that we didn't know what we were doing, and he was going to tell us how to do stuff.
Was he a radio guy or was he a corporate guy?
He was
both.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Did he have radio experience?
He had radio experience, but he was a different kind of boss than we were used to. We were used to bosses who
had respect for us.
Yeah, for our experience and our ability, and knew that we did what we did and let us do it.
Pantelis, I always believed that, radio is a very creative thing, or was a very creative thing, and that, you take two guys, you put them together, they do well, leave them alone.
Yeah.
Right? If they're doing well and you're getting ratings and people are buying commercials, touche pas. Don't let them go.
You know what, Ter? An example of that is Pat Holliday, who's one of the greatest radio programmers in North America.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying to us, I don't get it.
I don't get you guys.
But it works. So he left us alone.
And that guy worked on the radio in New York City. That guy knew radio.
Yeah, he knew that's the biggest radio market.
Yeah, he knew radio. Anyway, so this guy comes in and makes life really uncomfortable and miserable for us. And then our contracts expire. And he's in charge of putting our contracts together. And he puts contract together with what I called a punch clock clause. So the very first part of the contract says, you will arrive at this time, Monday to Friday, and you will only depart not before this time, Monday to Friday. And that was the first thing on the contract. I pulled it out of the envelope and put it right back in the envelope. And I went to see him and I said, I didn't get into this business to punch a clock. I do what I do, and I do how I do it. So I'm never going to sign that, not with a punch clock in it. He said, okay, get out of my office.
Oh, is that how he said it too?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a battle of control. He wanted control over us. He wanted to, don't you agree, Ted? He wanted to assert some kind of control.
Well, he was a control freak.
Right.
And I mean, we understood that he's the boss.
Right.
But
we tried to be respectful.
There's a dance, right? There's in our business there should be. I think any successful morning program has been a collaboration with their program director, not a when it gets dictatorial. To me, it's just not going to work.
And about a week later, he called us in the office and he said, "Okay, I took out the arrival time, but the departure time is still in." And I said, at the risk of repeating myself, I'm going to tell you again, I'm not signing that fucking thing with that punch clock in, and I'm not doing it.
But to understand, it's as if they're saying, let's say the show finishes at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
You can only leave at 3, meaning stick around for meetings.
Yeah.
You're contractually binded
You're
to stay here.
obligated to stay in the building.
That's weird.
Well, as you know from doing this, you don't just do your prep during set hours. You're thinking about the podcast constantly. Yeah. And some of your best ideas and best preparation come outside of the studio during your daily routine.
Yeah.
So we continued to work without a contract. And while that was happening, about 2 weeks later, out of the blue, I got a phone call from a guy in Calgary saying, "Hi, my name is Gary, and I work at Chorus Radio in Calgary." Nice to meet you, Gary. How are you? What can I do for you? He said, well, we're curious. We're looking to make a change in Calgary, and we're curious, what's the termination clause in your contract? How much notice do you have to give? And I said, I don't have a contract. There was a long pause, and he said, what? What do you mean you don't have a contract? I said, our contracts are expired, and I'm not obligated in any way, shape, or form. I said, out of courtesy, I would give 2 weeks notice, so 2 weeks. Anyway, the conversation started from there. I flew to Toronto to have lunch with these people. I liked them. They were very respectful, and everything they asked me, I liked, everything I asked them, I liked their answers and vice versa. And when I said, what kind of term are we talking about? How long do you want? 5 years, 7 years? Like, they really wanted me. And it was a big decision. I just turned 50. That's a big change. I'd been, become this sort of radio,
established.
Yeah, I was
and it's a whole different world.
Yeah.
We're talking about Alberta.
Yeah. And when you go to Calgary, when you go to a new market, you go all the way to the bottom. You start again because nobody knows who you are. So it was a very, very difficult decision. But Ted, being Ted and the good friend that he is, said, listen, do not let our friendship or our team stand in the way of you doing something good for you. He said, if you think that this is a right move for you, you should go for it. And I was miserable. I was drinking too much. I weighed over 300 pounds. I was in a bad way. And
all that stuff at work made you anxious.
Big time. Big time. I carried it with me everywhere. And so I went to Calgary. And in a lot of ways, I don't want to be dramatic, but in a lot of ways, it reset my buttons. It changed my life. I lost a lot of weight. I got healthy. I refocused on a new challenge. It was really, really good for me, but unfortunately, it put the end to our professional relationship.
And then you decided
I stayed at Shome, and I was there for another 2 years. And then my version of the guy who he butted heads with came along. And
new guy, different guy.
Yeah, different guy, but same sort of, I'm the boss and you'll do what I tell you to do. And I was like, but I've been here for this long and in this market for this long. I know the market. I know what I'm doing.
It's been working.
This should be, I'm not saying I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. You're still the boss, but this should be a collaborative. This is a creative endeavor. It should be collaborative.
Yeah, it's not like we were saying we know everything. That's not what we were saying. We were
Let us do what we know.
We know what works, and it has worked. Right. And again, I go back to Pat Holliday, who neither one of these guys could carry Pat Holliday's lunch.
No.
And Pat left us alone because he, again, he said, "I don't get it,
I don't,
but I know it works."
I listen to it, and I don't get it, but
I know it works,
there.
And so
success is there.
So he left us alone. So anyway, I ended up leaving a couple of years later. Terry was still in Calgary, so. We went our separate ways, and but we always remained in contact.
Yeah, good friends.
And on a regular basis, not like once every whatever. And the friendship has never waned. And look at us now.
Yeah.
Well, what prompted the return to Montreal? Because when you came back to Montreal, you almost instantly took over the English radio scene.
I was into my third year, I think, in Calgary. I had a 5-year deal, and I think I was well into my third or going into my fourth year. I can't remember which. And I got a phone call from the guy that was running Shome, and he said to me, "Hey, TD, I'm coming into town. You want to have dinner?" I said, "Sure, let's have dinner." So I picked him up at his hotel, and we went to a favorite Italian restaurant of mine in Calgary. And we sat down, and, the drinks, were waiting for drinks. And I said, "So, what are you doing in town?" He said, "I'm here for a meeting." I said, "Oh, yeah, when are you going back?" He said, "Tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow morning? You just fucking got here." He said, "Yeah, I'm at my meeting now." And me, I'm like, huh? What? And I said, "What do you mean you're at your meeting now?" He said, "Tara, I'm here to talk to you." And I said, "About what?" It's like
a child.
It was such a shitty end. I thought I'm never going back.
And it's so surprising because he never warned you.
Yeah, he couldn't possibly be asking me to come back. And he said to me, he said, listen, he said, since you left, when you and Ted, since you and Ted, we haven't been able to get the station, the morning show share over 19. He said, you and Ted had like a 22 or 23, whatever it was. I don't remember. He said, we've tried everything. We can't get it over 20, and we want you to come home. And I was like, what? So I was faced with another really big decision. Did I want to go back to Montreal? Did I want to? And anyway, I don't want to go on and bore everybody about the.
No, this is interesting.
Details.
This is history, yeah.
So in Calgary, I was making a lot of money. I had a nice house. I lived close to the Rockies, and I was very happy there.
Did you own a horse?
I did not own a horse.
Because if you're in Calgary, you better live the lifestyle, sir.
But I had 2 cowboy hats.
Okay, at least you get there. You were so close. If they didn't pull you back here, you would have had a pony at the very least.
Yeah. I probably eventually would have got a horse, I guess, because I needed something to go with my cowboy hats. I still have those cowboy hats, by the way. And the problem was the guys that I was working for in Calgary, they didn't really know. I warned them. I said, I have a style that's going to take a couple of years to get going. And, there was a recession in 2008 and things weren't going great. I couldn't get them to market me. They didn't seem to be that interested. And I thought, oh, well, we'll see what happens at the end of 5 years. I'll bank the money and then we'll see what happens. But now I'm presented with this opportunity to come back to Montreal. And I wondered if anybody would care about it. And, was I going back and everybody would say, well, that old guy again. But Shom offered me 8-year deal. Those days, that will never happen in the radio business again.
You're lucky they offer you a 3-month contract now.
I get this, Pantelis. I had a 5-year guaranteed deal. So that meant if I signed that contract and after 2 years they wanted to fire me, they had to pay me for 5. Because I said to my boss, I'm not moving all my shit and everything back without a guarantee.
Yeah.
So you guys called me, do you want to commit? They committed to 5 and put in an option for 3. And when I got, when we were in conversations, I said, what about Ted? How about you reunite me and Ted? And there were a lot of people in the industry that thought that was a good idea. But the guy who was asking me to come home did not think that was a good idea because he had a personal...
Yeah, when I left,
rivalries.
I really burned that bridge when I left. It was like not just one flamethrower, but one in each hand.
How did you walk out?
Well,
with his dick in your hand, like what?
Well, no, not really. No, I think what really burned his ass was I wrote a blog when my when I left. There was a clause in my contract that if I left, then they would pay me for 3 months. And in the period of that 3 months, if I did anything untoward, then that clause would be canceled. So at the end of 3 months, I posted a blog titled, "Here's What Happened at Shom."
Okay.
And I told the story of, from my perspective, of what happened at Shom, and I didn't pull any punches.
A lot of expletives?
No, not really. I just didn't pull any punches, and some feelings got hurt.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he was, his ego was bruised. So there was no going back to Shom for me as long as he was the guy who was in charge.
And was he correct in what he said? Did he overdo it, or was Ted correct?
I don't remember.
You know what he didn't like was I referred to him. I didn't refer to him by name, but I referred to him as a corporate errand boy.
Yeah, there you go.
Because after I resigned from Shom, he came to me when the 3 months was almost up. He came to me and said, "I'll tell you what. Why don't you come back and work at CJAD? But you'll have to take a pay cut."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, no, I'm not going to do that." And so in the blog, I said they sent one of their corporate errand boys to try to entice me back at a discount, and I declined. And I heard through the grapevine that he was very offended by that reference. And so
them's fighting words.
Well, them's fighting words. And then when I ended up at TSN 690 on the morning show, and when Bell purchased Astral Media, and this guy was the head honcho at Astro Montreal, Bell put him in charge of TSN 690, and his first order of business was to show me the door. So it was payback time, and well, listen, that's the way it goes.
Yeah. And this was, around the time when radio stations were being bought up en masse by just a couple of companies, and they were consolidating their power. So, for example, now in Montreal, Bell owns 4 of 5 commercial English radio stations. So Virgin, TSN, CJAD, and Shome are all owned by Bell Media, and Cogeco owns The Beat. C'est tout. And then you have CBC, but that's not a that's a publicly funded thing. It's a different thing. So
a waste of money, yeah.
So now I laughed when after my quote unquote retirement, people said, "Surely to God, he's going to turn up somewhere." And I said, "I'm not turning up anywhere because there's nowhere for me to turn up in Montreal. It's over." Also,
the whole what bugs me about you is the retirement. Why did you need to retire?
Well, I didn't.
You look all energetic.
He still sounds pretty good, doesn't he?
I didn't. I didn't need to retire. I didn't want to retire. There was a discussion back, after the 5 years of the 8-year deal, they had to exercise the option, and I said to them. They took me to dinner, and I said, "Just so you know, I'm not getting out of bed in the middle of the night for a penny less than I'm making now. So if you're here to exercise the option and ask me to take a pay cut, I'm not doing it." And we had a discussion.
Was that their plan? Yeah,
I think so. I don't know for sure, but I think so. But they said okay, and we did a little bit of a deal. I swapped a little bit of money for some extra holidays.
Okay.
And we came to an agreement. And at that meeting, almost 4 years ago now, they said, "And then we'll discuss what to do next." And I said, that may be time for me to retire. So fast forward to last summer, June of 2020, I had lunch with the then boss. I said, "So in a year, the contract's going to be up in May." And he said, "Yeah, and we got a retirement celebration planned." I said, "Oh,
I'm retiring."
He set up your retirement celebration.
Well, they ran under the assumption that I was going to retire, and I'll be honest with you. What I thought was unbelievably disrespectful was nobody asked.
Yeah, isn't that something you want to verify?
Nobody said to me, "Hey, we kind of like you. Do you want to maybe stick around for another year?" I thought, to be honest with you, Pantelis, I thought what a good plan would be, what I was secretly hoping for, was they would have come to me and said, "You know what? Why don't you finish out the year? Or how about we sign you for another year and we'll get through COVID?"
Yeah, together.
Right? And then we'll launch a new morning show and what. But that's not the way the business works anymore. I was making a 6-figure salary that they wanted off the books. And I understood that. I understand the business. And believe me, while we're telling this story, I'm not looking for sympathy. I had a great run. I enjoyed myself. The people at the radio station at the corner of Papineau and René Lévesque, my confrères, my colleagues, were all very respectful and did the best they could to celebrate my career over the month of May. They put a nice little sort of salute together.
Yeah.
But nobody ever asked me what I wanted. Nobody said, "Hey, are you sure about this? Do you?"
Even the Prime Minister tweeted.
Yeah. So I'll be honest with you. I've told you this before. There was nothing for me. There was nothing to be gained by me saying, "Oh, they didn't ask me." I'm a grown ass man. I know how the business works. Yeah. I thought, be dignified. Pretend that you're retiring and go out with your head up. Don't Don't get into all the machinations of the business.
It wouldn't change anything anyway.
Nah, it wouldn't change anything. So I went along with it, and people were very kind. And like I said, the people in the building, the people who were responsible for day-to-day business at Shome were very respectful. They, the marketing people, the program director, they all worked very hard to send me off with a nice send-off. But the footprint of Bell is on my back because, in my opinion, they just wanted me out. So they never asked me if I wanted to stay. They were quite happy to have my salary off the books. That's what it looks like. That's what it feels like.
Well, they had to because
that's what happened, because nobody said to me, hey, would you like to stick around for another year, or you really want to retire?
Why would you need to stick around? I mean, they understand radio, and everybody listens to the radio to catch their favorite hit song, because there's no other way to get your favorite song but by chance on the radio.
So
he might be.
Why would you need real people?
Yeah.
Why would you need real people having conversations? Who would tune into that? That's crazy.
I offered to write a blog for him, and I also offered him my flamethrowers, but he graciously declined because where I took the low road, he took the high road.
Yeah, Ted calls you. Do you have a publicist? Because I'm not bad at this. I'm not that. I've got a good track record.
And listen, we had a great run. He's still having it. We had a great run.
Yeah, he's still doing it.
And I've got absolutely nothing to complain about, and I'm not looking for poor you. Nobody asked you.
No. I love that you're actually giving the story of what happened, because no one would ever be able to know otherwise.
Yeah, and I think. And Ted would tell me if he thought I was full of shit. I think, somebody who's been, let's say you're a watchmaker at your jewelry store, and your watchmaker's been there for 37 years, and he says to you, I want to retire. I think you say to him, we love having you. Are you sure you want to retire?
And let's set up how you're going to retire. It wouldn't be like, I want to retire. You're like, all right, grab your things.
Yeah. And
Get out.
I had some experience, in the 90s when I was chosen to succeed George Balkan. They did it right. George announced his retirement. There was some moment of reflection, a few weeks or months of reflection. And then George announced that I would be succeeding him. And George said to the audience, this is a nice young man that you're going to enjoy. And I want to wish him well. And there was a nice change of the guard.
They did it right because different people owned the company, and different people were running the radio station.
Right.
Radio people were in charge. Radio people owned the company.
Yeah.
There was a seismic shift in the industry in the early 2000s when families, two in particular, the Waters family, which owned the Chum radio chain, and the Slate family, which owned the Standard radio chain, which we worked for. Actually, we worked for both. Shome eventually was sold by the Waters family to the Slate family. Anyway, when radio families were in charge, the radio people, radio professionals owned the radio stations and hired radio people to run the radio stations. So they were run a lot differently than when the families sold to the corporations, which I don't begrudge them. If someone offered me $1 billion for my stuff, I'd probably say yes too.
But you can't take it back. You already offered it. Yeah.
But everything changed when it went from being a family business to being a corporate business. Everything changed, and for us and people who do what we do, it did not change for the better.
And how was it for you guys? Because you had to live during the time when Howard Stern's syndication started taking over North America. How did you guys live that?
Well, we had to live that because when we were at Mix 96, Shome brought Howard Stern in to do the morning show. And in the beginning, he wiped the floor with everybody.
We hated it at the time because it felt like, it felt like it was David and Goliath, right? It felt like you were standing on the street and Godzilla came around the corner and was going to, just stamp you out. And as a matter of fact, Howard, back in those days, one of the things that he used to do when he was going into new markets and syndication, he used to say he was going to buy burial plots. And
for the local radio teams, morning shows.
One of it's a great source of pride for us that we were mentioned on the Howard Stern show back in the 90s when he said, he said
his very first show in Montreal, he
Terry
says, I don't know who the competition is. A couple of guys named Terry and Ted, but, fuck.
Yeah,
These
we're
guys.
Gonna bury these useless arseholes or something like that. And there was a rumor that he had bought a burial plot for us. And
that's amazing.
And also, everybody was talking about him, and our friends were saying to us, "What are you going to do? Where are you going to go work?"
Oh, like it's so obvious that you're done.
You're
guys
done.
are done.
You're cooked. You're done. Howard's in town. You're fucking done.
I'm curious about something, and I can ask you guys, and hopefully you can answer. So at the time Howard was doing, the reason why he became, let's say, the king of all media, all that, is because he was doing whatever he wanted, and he didn't have a short leash. Were you guys allowed to fight on his terms, or would the stations here be like, no, you can't go that far? Because how do you compete?
Well, here's what happened. Our general manager, Rob Braid, who is a very smart radio guy, said
Terry,
to
Ted,
us,
I brought some hookers in. Interview him.
Well, after the hookers, and it wasn't for an interview. No, Rob said, and he had researched it. Rob said the way that you beat Howard Stern or compete, the way you compete with Howard Stern is with strong local personalities. You guys are strong local personalities, so just do what you do, and everything will be okay. And I don't know how long it took. I think it was a year or so.
Anyway.
Yeah,
I think they tossed him out because he said something about the French community here.
Well,
he did that right out of the gate.
First day.
They ultimately,
the first day he started talking shit.
They ultimately tossed him out because his ratings, which were through the roof in the beginning, because it was something so new and shocking,
people got upset.
That everybody had to listen. A friend of mine described it as, and a friend of mine who was one of the "What are you guys going to do? You're fucked." He described it as like watching pornography. He said for the first little bit, it was absolutely fascinating, and then it became the same thing over and over again. So what happened was we eventually surpassed him in the ratings once again, and I think it was during his tenure at CHOM that we had our best ratings period ever.
Yeah,
and that's not to say that Howard Stern isn't very good at what he does.
Oh, clearly he is,
But he has since changed his style. He does a different style now than he was doing.
Obviously. You have to evolve.
We have, we mentioned Howard because, we couldn't carry his lunch, to be honest with you. Compared to what he's done, he's a groundbreaker.
Yeah.
He is the reason Sirius XM is still around. He changed the face of broadcasting and broadcasters. And as Ted has pointed out, I've listened to a lot of Howard Stern in the last 10 years. His interviews are spectacular, and he's grown as a man and evolved as a person, and he's brought that with him to become the massive icon that he is today.
I think instead of talking to Hank the Drunken Dwarf, now he has
Paul McCartnney on.
Yeah, exactly, and does really good interviews.
And he gets them to relax, and he's really good at it, and we have an immense amount of respect for him. But during that period,
obviously,
we were freaking out. But now that we look back on it, it was pretty cool. We got to work in a market against Howard Stern,
which is such a not many people lived through that, survived, and could talk about it now.
And ultimately, we stayed the course at the strong urging of our boss,
and we had the support. Right, our boss said to it, "Look, you're going to get your ass kicked." The ratings are going to go in the toilet. Just relax. Just keep your hands on the steering wheel. Don't panic. Just keep doing what you do. He said, I'm telling you, we're going to come out the other side of this. That's radio people running radio stations who understand the medium. That we were lucky to have that kind of support.
Yeah, exactly the opposite of the guy who ran him out and the other guy who eventually ran me out.
And when, in recent times, when was that shift that happened when you guys stopped being allowed to really be yourselves, your characters, and it fucking became this whole every 15 minutes remind people of what the time is, don't talk too much, give them a song, because like I said, you can't get music anywhere. When did that become so strict? Because now you can't listen to local radio. You feel like breaking it.
I think a lot of it is that they're not hiring really good talent these days. There aren't a whole lot of people who can do a lot besides tell the time and the temperature. Because you get what you pay for, right?
Yeah.
And they're not paying guys like they used to pay Terry.
Yeah, and I also think, one of the things, I mean, that was a battle I fought all my career, Pantelis, right from the get-go, back in 78. The guy that hired me said, holy fuck, can you talk? He said, wow, you can really talk. And for years and years and years, all I ever heard was, you talk too much, your breaks are too long. But, as you become more successful, they back off. And they go, like that, Pat said to us, I don't know, I don't get it, but, it works, so we'll leave you alone. So in the last 10, 12 years, I pretty much did what I wanted. I didn't... they would come in every once in a while and say, that was a little long this morning, that thing you did. And I would say, yeah, it was. And I just kept doing what I did.
What do they have against money? More people listening to better shows leads to better money in advertising. What don't they understand?
There's a lot of research, and there's an old school thought, and it's an old school thought because there's Spotify, and there's Apple Music, and there's YouTube, and there's your library on your phone. If you want to hear Time in a Bottle by Jim Croce, you can hear it like right now.
Why would I wait?
We play that on Light 106.7, by the way.
Or you can hear it on Light 106. But mostly, just this weekend, a woman saw us, Ted and I were out for dinner, and she said, I loved listening to you guys. I didn't like the commercials or the music, but I loved hearing you guys talk.
Obviously.
So, that at one time, that became an important thing. There was, you would play maybe 3 or 4 records an hour, but there was always the management guys who would say, well, 4 records an hour. Our research shows that you could increase your audience if you had 8 records an hour. And I used to think, what? People, if I'm doing something interesting, if Ted and I were having fun and having a laugh, I didn't look at the clock.
I mean, to be honest, that's the feedback I get. They say great interviews, not enough Ariana Grande. So it's the same feedback we get.
Yeah, it's a strange thing, and it's evolved. And you I don't know, 10 minutes ago you said when did it change? It's always
slowly.
It's always kind of been like that. But now you have very young people in jobs they wouldn't have got 10 years, 12 years ago, making very little money, who will do everything they're told because they don't want to lose that job.
And then there's probably no room for them to grow.
Well, you can't grow if you dive right in at the top. If you come out of school and go right on television in Montreal, Toronto, you look like you've come right out of school.
Yeah, you can tell.
You're not seasoned. You don't have experience. Ted and I had the benefit of being in the industry at a time, and to the kids' credit, there's not a lot of places you can go work. Like when I was in high school, there was a radio station in Cornwall I could have gone to work at. There's a radio station in Brockville. There was a radio station in Brandon. There's a radio station.
There was a radio station on the West Island.
On the West Island, Seafox. You could have gone an intern there. But when I was a kid, I wanted to be in radio so bad, I sent letters to all the radio stations of Montreal. And a general manager downtown said, if you want to come in, and I'll show you the radio station. He was super nice to me. His name was Bill Hambley. And he showed me the radio station, and I said to him, what do you suggest I do? Now, this is 1975 or 76, so it's 1,000 years ago. But he said to me, Ter, you've got to leave Montreal. You cannot, you will not get hired. Montreal's too big a city. It's too important a market. You've got to leave and go get experience. But today, they want to know if you'll, either work for free or work for $27,000 a year. And what happens is, if you're a kid, you're like, oh, I'm on the radio.
Yeah, you're not thinking.
Hey, I must have made it. And it's like carpentry. It's like podcasting. It's like an electrician. You don't want to, you've got to learn some things before.
Don't open your own company right away. You apprentice.
Yeah. You can't wire a house right away. You know what I mean? You got to learn at somebody's feet. So that era is now gone, I think, because the corporations, who understandably have to answer to shareholders, that's, Bell and Chorus are publicly owned companies. They have to answer to shareholders. Their job is to keep their share price up. So my personal opinion, it's just my personal opinion. My personal opinion is their approach is put a bum in that seat for as little as you can.
Yeah. You're not building the show around that person. That person's there to fill in a slot.
They're not interested. Yeah. They're not interested. They want to run them as tightly as they can. Because when I look back at it, from the time I came back from Calgary, I was hired by Astral Media. They put up a bunch of billboards saying Terry DiMonte is home. That was the last penny that was ever invested in Show'em or my show. All they've done is cut people and resources because they keep trying to run them tighter and tighter and tighter. It's the broadcast equivalent of Heinz shrinking the ketchup bottle, right? They keep shrinking the cereal boxes and they keep making the bottles of ketchup smaller, so that they can say, hey, this bottle of ketchup's $2.97. It's a lot less than it used to be at $2.97, but that's the way corporations think.
And that goes back to the difference between when radio people owned and ran radio stations. And imagine Gary Slade if he came into town and heard some kid kicking the news around the block on CJD. He'd have a.
I hope his voice would crack too. The president said
in the news. Yeah, he would have no part of it. He would have no part of it. He would say, well, it wouldn't have happened in the first place.
And
but
you know what?
Theoretically, if it did, he would say, get that kid off there and put in a professional.
Yeah. I'm not coming to anybody's defense, but you and I were talking in the green room. The whole world is run this way now.
Yeah.
Right? The whole world is, we don't need 10 people. Put 4. Let 4 people do the work of 10. And if people have to stand in line, fuck them. Let them stand in line, right? That's the way the whole world works now. So radio that was once a creative and artful process mixed with business is now just a business.
And if we sound like old guys, crabby old guys pining for the good old days, let me just say I'm grateful that I was able to do it during the good old days.
Yeah, we had a ball, and it's all I ever wanted to do. And I did it with, I did it with gusto. I made good friends. I tried to help as many charities as I could. We had a lot of laughs. We had a lot of fun. It was exactly what I hoped it would be when I was 16 and I said I want to be on the radio. It's exactly what I hoped it would be. And it's sad to watch what's happening to it. But again, I don't want anybody to watch this or listen to this and think I'm pissing and moaning, because I'm not.
No, and also you're not wrong. I'll tell you why. Because if you were wrong, then there wouldn't be this alternative media that's exploding, podcasting,
right?
Which is doing what the best radio used to be known for.
We're not telling you anything you don't know about having fun, because I watch you guys on 2 Drink Minimum, you and Mike and Poseidon.
Yeah.
You guys are having a ball.
Yeah. But that's why people like it.
Well, that's it. Yeah. And it's the same as what we used to do. It's just fun, and there's a natural flow to it, and there's laughter, and you're not thinking about, Jesus, man, I got to get to commercials, or we need to get in another song.
Yeah.
If I don't tell these guys what the weather is, are they going to go out and get wet? It's so crazy.
And I think when this podcast drops, people may have already seen the teaser.
They would have, yeah.
Okay. And I was explaining to Pantelis, and I hope I can I hope I can describe this properly. When I started in FM radio in the summer of 1978, I was in a rock station in Winnipeg where everybody had long hair, and there was the smell of, I didn't smoke, but there was the smell of grass often coming from an office. The music was loud. There were albums everywhere, and nobody wanted to go home. We would, my show was from 2 p.m. till 6, and I'd get to the building at around 9:30 or 10. We'd hang, and then at 6 o'clock, I'd come out of the studio, and there'd be people still there talking, discussing music, and somebody would go, "Hey, I got an idea. Let's do this." And it was this like really cool, if you've ever watched WKRP, it was kind of like that, where people had ideas and ideas came and they got executed, and it was like a bunch of artists together. It was a very cool, creative thing, and you could hear it coming out of the speakers. People would say, "You guys are having a ball. I love listening to you guys." That was what radio was like. And when we were here at the studio on Friday, when I got here, Ted and I were coming up the stairs, and I said to Phil, we get this idea for a promo, and it's like, I want like a picture of the feet going up the stairs, and then it's Ted and I in the elevator, and then, and the elevator closes, and then you see microphones, and Phil goes, yeah, I got it. Know exactly what you're talking about. 1 hour later, like 1 hour,
it's done.
He calls us into the office and says, "Hey guys, come look at this." And I'm getting goosebumps telling you the story.
He got goosebumps, and I got a lump in my throat looking at it.
And I was hitting Phil like this on the shoulder going, "This is fucking amazing." Because it's that thing that you've seen online, that thing's like a television commercial. It could run on CTV or ABC, and it's exactly what was in my head. And that's what this building that you've put together is. It reminds me of being 20 years old, hanging out with creative people who are doing creative things and having a ball with absolutely no restrictions. It's really eye-opening for guys like us that have come from a structure that was squeezing and squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. And this is, hey, do what you want.
Hey, it's you guys. We trust you. That's why I'm so excited for people's reactions to your podcast, to just have that freedom and have you back and just feel like, oh, it's like a breath of fresh air. That's why everyone liked them. That's how these guys became legends. Oh, yeah. I miss that.
There's that legends thing again, Ted.
Yeah. Well, it's true. Ask anyone.
Did I not say icons?
Hold on, but ask anyone that's ever listened, that grew up during that time and understands Montreal radio. It's your voices. There's commercials that are stuck in my head of places because of you guys. It's just how it's the truth. It's just how it is. You guys you legitimized radio at the time here. People feel like they grew up with you, like they know you. It's the morning drive stuff for most people in Montreal, because of the traffic, you learn to associate with a certain station and whoever the host is there, and they become part of your routine. So for that to slowly throughout the years start dying out, and now I want to listen, but by the time I got to work, I've been in traffic 50 minutes. I heard him for maybe 10. Yeah. All that stuff, people think about it, whether it's subconscious, and that's when people start shifting more to podcasts. Actually, let me listen to a full conversation. I don't want to have to stop because of Christina Aguilera. Let me listen to a full thing. And the shift happened.
One of the nicest things, I still haven't done it, but I want to put it in a frame. One of the nicest things that was said to me as I was retiring in the month of May, Mark Cassidy from La Presse wrote a column called, in French, I'm not sure what the saying is, like boucle au boucle, like a belt loop, like a loop. And the basis of the column was he got driven to school by his father when he was a kid in high school, listening to me and Ted. And now, for the last time, I'm going to be driving my kids with you on the radio, and it's the end of an era. And it meant so much to me to hear that. That made me happy, and it made me sad, because he was kind of saying, that's it. Like, we're not going to see that kind of creativity again. And I don't think he was wrong.
No, he wasn't wrong. Not the way things are going.
There's a consultant named Valerie Geller, who's probably the most respected and celebrated radio consultant in North America. Wouldn't you say, Sarah?
I agree. I had the real fortune of working with Val in Calgary.
She has said two things that really resonated with me, and the first one will probably resonate with you, because I'll bet you guys have heard it from your podcast. She says the highest compliments you can be paid as a broadcaster are, one, when people say to you, I feel like I know you.
Yeah.
How often have you heard that?
A lot.
Yeah.
I feel like I know you. She says that's the highest compliment you can be paid as a broadcaster, and I think that applies to podcasters as well. The other one wouldn't apply to podcasting so much because of the nature of the platform versus radio, but the other one was, I couldn't get out of the car until you were finished.
Yeah. Yeah,
and we heard that a lot over the years too. Like, people get to where they're going, they get to work, but they can't get out of the car because
I have to hear the end of this.
They want to hear the end of what they're hearing on the radio.
Or I laughed so hard I had to pull over.
Yeah, that
was another good one. Yeah,
but that's what I'm saying. So all that stuff, why? This is what's jarring to me. It looks like they're just playing. They're shifting it around. I'm going to buy this radio station. I'll sell this one later, and they just cut every single time to the point where, who are you going to sell these stations to if they don't know what they're doing? They're useless. No one's listening.
One of the things that I've always observed is America seems to be 10 years in broadcasting. America seems to be 10 years ahead.
That's what Mike says about Quebec. He says the States are 10 years ahead of us.
Yeah. And what's happening in America is 10, 12 years ago, Clear Channel and all these big companies started to buy up these radio stations, and fire everybody and put tapes on, and, what they were trying to do was
Ryan Seacrest was syndicated everywhere.
Right, exactly. And they were trying to set up, they were setting up a corporation. It was nothing to do with the local communities they were buying radio stations in. And then over the years, Clear Channel and other companies like it found it increasingly difficult to manage them. And they've begun selling them back to local people. And those local people are infusing them with local energy again. If you look at television, and television is another thing. I don't remember the last time I watched a program on regular television, because that's another place they've cut all the resources. I used to, watch the news all the time, but they fired all the reporters. So what's there's no news. So these television stations, if you look just to the south of us, ABC in Burlington, NBC, the WPTZ in Plattsburgh, and even the CBS station in Burlington, they've all injected money into their news packages, and they all refer to their news packages as Local 22 News. And they've hired people, and they've got reporters, and they got people out in trucks, and so it's beginning to turn back.
Yeah, because they saw that it doesn't work.
The other way doesn't work. If there's nothing to watch, and you don't want to listen to anything, then your ratings go down. And if your ratings go down, your revenues fall. You don't have to go to Harvard to learn this.
Do you know what the ownership is of those? Are they small, independent-owned stations that are affiliated with the networks?
I wish I knew. I don't think they are.
Because that's the kind of thing that an actual local broadcaster would do.
That's exactly right.
As opposed to a huge corporation, which would just cut.
Yeah, well, I think they
nobody at corporate headquarters is going to go, I think we should invest in WPTZ in Plattsburgh.
But I'm telling you,
never happen.
Do yourself a favor and have a look. Have a look at the news packages. The news packages look like our local news used to look like 10 years ago.
Yeah,
I remember how our local. It was Bill Hoagland, Mitsumi Takahashi. I remember all that stuff. Yeah, and again, it somehow just disappeared.
Well, I was so involved in the community because that's the way those places were run. I remember the year the DeCarry flooded. The DeCarry was flooding. And we were in the building on Fort Street.
I was on the DeCarry.
And
You're a good swimmer.
And I remember the news director, Gord Sinclair, came into a crowded newsroom because there was lots of reporters. He went, everybody out! Go get me stories. And reporters went out, and the news would start with, Jane is at the corner of the Carrie and Jean Talon. And
Our coverage begins with...
And now we go to, Bob, who's at the corner of... And Al is broadcasting from next to the ladder where people are... Like it was... And you knew back then that if the power went out, there was a snowstorm, the DeCarry was flooded, you better listen to CJD because they got it covered.
And what they would do now is get a shot from the Transport Quebec video camera.
Right.
And that would be the extent of their coverage.
Yeah, they do that a lot. Yeah, they just take a generic feed, and then sometimes I also see them taking clips from the national news and just using that as the local thing if it's a big story.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, it's so stupid. But you guys in podcasting, are you guys excited about the fact that you're going to get to connect directly again with your fans?
Oh, 100%.
I hope so. I said, it's to be honest with you, Pantelis, I said to Ted just today, normally when I sit in front of one of these things, the first thing that comes to mind is, good morning, it's Wednesday morning on a beautiful sunny day, and I'm thinking to myself, no, that's not what this is.
Yeah, different ball game.
And it took me just like a podcast or two to get into the rhythm. And then I thought, excuse me, shit, we could just do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And him and I are now being able to, people used to say to me, oh, I'd love to be a fly on the wall when you guys had dinner. Well, now you can.
Yeah, it's true.
Now you can, because basically that's what we're doing. I said to Ted yesterday, I hope we're not boring the shit out of everybody. But
I know your producer because he's my producer, and no, he would have told me.
We're doing what we've always done, and now we've got nothing to think about except what we want to talk about. And I can't begin to tell you as a guy who's a creative person how that feels and what that means to me. I'm really grateful to you and Mike. I really am.
Well, we're just excited to have you guys on board. We think it's going to be a great time. It's going to be fun. And I'm glad to see you guys like this. Like, no tension, just happy. Because I know that
we're pretty drunk, you know that. Right?
No, but the thing is, when we met a few months ago... I remember a few months ago when we had met again, and you were still... I think it was at the tail end.
Yeah.
And also, because of the contract, you couldn't even speak publicly about what's going on. And I could sense your frustration. You hated being muzzled. So you weren't yourself.
Yeah.
You had that anxiety in your head, and it was bugging you. You're a different person. The last couple of days, you're a different... It's just the freedom... I could feel you, the free Terry.
Thank you, Pantelis. It's like you said to me yesterday, and thank you for saying that. You said, you did the right thing, right? I went out with my head up.
You did 100%.
I didn't, nobody dragged me out of the building. I left the building. It was time. I came to the conclusion that, okay, nobody asked me if I wanted to stay. So I guess it's time to do something else. It is. And, as radio contracts, and I'm not just talking about local radio stations, I'm talking about stations all over the country, massive stations, big stations that had big footprints, CFRB in Toronto, there's all kinds of them. And they're contracting. They're choking the oxygen out of them.
When your show comes out, something else is going to contract in those people. It's going to be fun.
Their sphincter?
You know what? I think there's a lot of people in the broadcast industry who go, podcast, schmodcast. Let them do it. Nobody's going to listen to it.
I love that. Because the person who proved that theory wrong was Mike here in Montreal. And the way he did it was the funniest when I think there was a broadcaster on the local radio. And the French scene is pretty big, too.
Yeah, the French scene
radio.
Yeah, and I should quickly, sorry to interrupt. Yeah. The French scene is a different scene.
Oh, it's a different scene.
There's lots of money. They're not choking it out.
No, even in comedy, it's a whole different ballgame.
Well, it's the difference between a major market and a medium to minor market.
Sorry.
But so what he did was, since they were talking that much shit, he waited. And as soon as he had made it was a couple of million, I forgot how many downloads a month. Basically it's Joe Rogan and then him worldwide when you look at the numbers. So it's the number one French language comedy podcast on the planet. So when he had those numbers, he bought the billboard right in front of that station that was talking shit, and he wrote all his numbers, and he says, "Look, I could afford billboards too now." It was the best fucking thing, and now he's planning another one too because he has like a new milestone he reached. So he's gonna attack them again just by buying billboards in front of them, so they have to look at it every morning. He's great, but no, you guys, this is exciting, and I think you're gonna get a lot of good feedback. We should probably set up an email too, so people send you guys questions and.
Well,
things like that.
As a matter of fact, my wife said that. My wife, I was talking to her last night, and she said, "Why don't you guys take questions?" I said, "I'm sure there's a way we can take questions from the audience and answer them."
There's many ways we can do it. We'll talk about it, but there's many ways, and I think it'll be amazing.
Yeah.
It also gives you good content because then you have a section.
100%,
Let's take 20 minutes, address all this.
I was listening to Poseidon's was it Poseidon's podcast I was listening to the other night, and they were referencing people who were. I was going to say listeners, but what do you call it in the podcast?
Well, listeners, same thing.
They had people online who they were engaging with during the podcast.
Yeah, you could do it. We have everything set up. We have a Discord server that we set up, and there's people that sign in. They could talk to you live. They could even join the broadcast if you want them to. Yeah. We watch movies sometimes on there, and it's all a community. Two of our fans got together. They started dating.
No kidding.
Meeting on that server. Yeah, so there's...
Do you think I could meet someone?
Of course. You got to hide your real self for a while. Don't let them know the real...
No. Sounded so sad, Ted.
But then, how did you end up at... It's the Jewel right now that you're at, right?
Yeah, well, they just rebranded. They're called Light 106.
Light.
Yeah.
How did you get out there? Because it's from kind of... I guess Joey Elias' school that I've started meeting people from around Hudson. I didn't even know the place existed before. How did you end up going there?
Well, it was a very circuitous route. After I left Shome, I worked at K103 in Ganawage for a couple of years.
How was that?
That was great.
Do they have absolute freedom?
No, they're run by. They have a board. They're a public community radio station. They have a board that runs the radio station, a board of directors, and they adhere. Just out of courtesy, they adhere to CRTC regulations, just to keep on friendly terms with Industry Canada.
Because I think that's a bunch of bullshit. I think the natives should do whatever the hell they want.
Well, you know what? I've always said I would love to get my hands on a signal that I could base out of Ganawage and strike a deal with the Mohawk Band Council and say, we want to do a pirate radio station off your territory and make a deal with them and then just do whatever the fuck you want. Yeah. But I don't even know if you wouldn't need to do that anymore because now you can do this. Yep. You can do what we're doing here now. But anyway, I was there for 2 years, and I told the story on one of our podcasts. One of the highest compliments I've ever been paid in my life, professionally or personally. No, I'll be able to get through it without crying.
He cries when he tells the story.
I thought it was sexual.
No. No, I've never been paid a compliment during or after sex.
I've been paid, though. Yes. I have been paid. I've been on the receiving end of some cash.
About a year and a half into my 2-year tenure in Ganawage, I was coming out of the local coffee shop one day, and a gentleman and his teenage son were going in, and we said hello and exchanged salutations. And after I passed them, I heard the guy turn to his son and say, "That's Ted Bird. He's part of our community now." And that's a pretty high compliment in a very closed and guarded community, and a community that's closed and guarded for good reason, if you know your history.
Yep.
And
that's why I'm saying they should do whatever the fuck they want.
For him to say that, I thought to myself, you know what? I've done the right thing then while I've been here. I've done the right thing. I've made the right choices. Because I cracked that nut, and that's a tough nut to crack.
Nicely done, Birdman. Not even a hint of a tear.
Not even the voice didn't even crack.
Give me some of those Kleenexes.
And then after 2 years in Ganawage, there was an opening on the morning show at TSN 690, which was a perfect fit for me. I'm a sports fan. I've been a sports broadcaster in the past, and I thought, okay. And they approached me. And I thought, perfect. This is the one that I can ride into the sunset.
And they were owned by Astral.
Yeah.
At the time.
No, they were owned by Bell at the time.
Okay.
Were they?
They were owned by Bell, yeah. And so I was there for a couple of years, and then Bell acquired the Astral stations,
right, yes.
which were Shome, CJ80, and Virgin.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Bell acquired the Astral stations, and the president of Bell Radio said to me, "I know you have some concerns because the Astral management team, I know there's some history
hates
there.
You.
I know you have some concerns. Don't worry, you'll be fine." And I didn't worry, but I wasn't fine because when the Astral management team came in, their first order of business was to show me the door.
How did they do that? Did they approach you and say, "There's no chance, get out"? Or Would you like to apologize, Mr. Burton?
They actually walked you out of the building, didn't they?
Yeah, the way it happened was
That's
they
unbecoming.
they called a meeting of the whole staff, and they said,
Fuck this guy.
at the staff.
Thank you guys for joining the team, except for you.
Yeah, well, basically, it sort of happened that way at the staff meeting. The guy in charge said, "We've got some redundancies. We're going to make some changes. It's not personal. It's just that it's just what it is. It's business." And then he walked over to me, and I was sitting with my leg crossed like this. He walked over to me and went like that on my shoe and said, "Come with me." Ooh. And they took me into an office, and there was an HR person there, and they gave me an envelope and said, I was on contract at the time. I was an independent contractor. I wasn't a payroll employee. We're terminating your services. Have a good day.
I hate that corporate the way they do it.
He did everything but go because he was the guy who I called a corporate errand boy. So this was his this was payback.
I like how he did it in full corporate errand boy style.
Yeah, well,
he didn't even try to show you that, no, look, I'm a human being. I'm going to fire you in a humane way. He's like, no, we're doing this corporate.
Well, listen, it's that's the way it goes. I took my shot, and he took his shot, and his was the kill shot.
Yeah.
Is he still around? This guy seems useless.
You know what's funny, Pantelis, is we all have different experiences, because I had nothing but good experiences with him.
Really?
Yeah, it's the guy we're talking about, and I don't want to drag.
So is he still around? He's doing good work.
He's moved on to other things. Yeah.
Is it because he wasn't good enough at what he was
exploring other opportunities?
He ran the radio stations for a number of years, and tried to build a nice culture of French and English together in that building. And there was some shuffling that went on, and he got walked out the door. After
one of those karma situations.
Well, I don't know if you want to call it that.
He probably got a bigger severance check than I did, though.
And I would imagine, these guys.
Yeah, it was
golden parachute.
One of those things where somebody in Toronto moves some pieces around, and then the next thing you know, it's all changed. And I got to say something. He was for. Not for Ted, but he was for us, our firewall between Toronto and Montreal.
So this guy wasn't all bad.
No, he wasn't all bad. And when he left, when they moved him out, all bets are off. The radio stations, get this, when they moved him out and sent him home with, the same way they walked him out the door, the radio stations in Montreal are now run out of Ottawa. The boss of TSN, CJD, Shome, and Virgin, his office is in Ottawa.
It's the most boring place on the planet. Why would you?
It's the town that fun forgot.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So I mean, and this is, he's now in charge of Montreal, I think in the Maritimes, if I'm not mistaken. I could be. But that's what they're doing. They're trying to, organize it so that very few people have many, many jobs to do. And that isn't, it's, in my opinion, it's not healthy. It's a good way to drive your share price up, I guess, but it's not healthy.
That's the whole point of the exercise.
But it's not sustainable. That's what I hate.
Well,
it's short term. It looks good because you just cut off some salaries.
Yeah.
Hey, look, the profit margins look better. But long term, it's unsustainable because less money, less viewers, less advertisers, everything goes down.
And again, it's what we, it's all over the world. When a hedge fund bought Tim Hortons and Tim Hortons' business decreased because the food got shitty.
Yeah, that's why.
People wonder why. Hedge fund bought Tim Hortons and said, don't make donuts in the shop. We'll make them all down the highway and we'll freeze them and ship them to the donut place.
Or as we learned this morning, don't give away napkins at the drive-thru. What are you doing giving them napkins?
Or make sure you serve,
let them lick their fingers.
Sell all the bagels, even the stale ones.
Yeah. It's
because
it was awful.
It's and I used to say it's like if you and I bought a butcher shop in Park X. And we fired all the butchers.
Yeah.
What do you know about being a butcher?
Terry, get a knife.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that a pig? Is it a cow? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's see if we can sell meat.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Do people eat the hooves? I don't know what to do with this. I
love a good hoof.
But this guy, he wasn't all bad. How much of an asshole were you? You couldn't get along with this guy who wasn't all bad.
I was a big asshole, I guess. No, it all went back to the blog and to the corporate errand.
I'm surprised you couldn't talk about it. I'm surprised he never reached out and been like, look, I didn't know you felt that way. I'm surprised neither of you were able. I'm a man that likes to discuss. So if I have a problem with someone and it's kind of vague, sometimes I'll try to meet with them to address it.
I think there was too much pride and ego on both sides. I think when Terry came back to Montreal, I could have picked up the phone and called him, and there might have been some consideration given. Yeah. He could have picked up the phone and called me, and there might have been some consideration given. But we both had too much pride and ego to do that.
The good old days.
Yeah. Anyway, after he fired me, I ended up at a little country station in Ganawage where I worked for free because they didn't have any money at all. So I just
wanted to do it.
I just wanted to do it. So I went and I did the afternoon show, so I didn't have to get up in the middle of the night. And that's where I developed a love affair with country music and learned that we all love country music. We just don't all know it yet. I really like it a lot. Every song tells a story, and you can sing along to every song. And I was there for a few months, and then the Jewel came along, and that's run by a company out of Toronto called Evanov, which is owned by the Evanov family. So now I'm back in family radio again, which is good, at a small station out in Hudson, St. Lazare, and we serve the West Island and the Vaudreuil-Soulanges area, and it's radio the way it used to be done. It serves the community. It's a radio station that serves the community. And I certainly am not compensated to the level that I was when I worked at the big stations.
It's a whole different market
in Montreal, but I'm doing what I love to do, and I'm having an absolute ball, and I'm very lucky to be employed because of the way the industry has gone. There are a lot of really good broadcasters out there
on the bench.
Can't find work.
Yeah.
A lot of shit ones that are employed too, like at CJD. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah, well, those are the ones who are getting paid peanuts. And part of the problem with bringing people in directly out of school or directly off the street and giving them good jobs in bigger markets is that they don't have any respect for what they're doing because they think that
it's easy.
Well, they don't understand that the most important lessons you learn in life are the lessons you learn after you know it all, as Harry Truman once said. And when Terry and I were starting out in the business, and even when our careers started to flourish, we always respected the people who came before us because we learned a lot from them.
Yeah.
And Terry will tell you that in his time in that building down on Papineau, no one ever came to him and sought his counsel or his advice or tried to learn anything from him. And
were you mean to the new kids?
No, he was anything but. He's always been one of those guys who has extended his hand to anyone inside and outside the industry who needed counsel, whether it was professional or personal.
Everybody was always nice to me. And I reached out. Like when I was in Winnipeg, there was a really popular, famous morning guy there. And I thought, you know what? This guy's really successful. I want to talk to him. And I got to know him very well. We're still friends today. When I arrived in Montreal in 1984, George Balkan was on the radio and still on the radio from when I was a kid in elementary school. And here I was on the radio in Montreal, and I thought, I wonder if George Balkan will talk to me. And, I phoned him at the radio station. I was working at CHOM. He was on the other side of the street and the other side of the dial. I called him, left him a message. He phoned me back. And I said, Mr. Balkan, would you consider having a coffee with me? Of course I would. And we became friends, and he taught me a lot. And to me, that's, it's like you watch your mother make sauce, right? You stand next to your grandmother or your mother, and you watch her put together the Sunday sauce because you want to learn from people who are really, really good at it.
Yeah,
and that's what I did. I sought out the counsel of a lot of these. For me, they were giants. George Balkan was a broadcast giant at a time. When there was only radio and television, he was one of the country's biggest stars, and He had coffee and dinner and lunch with me.
And he wanted to give some info,
Yeah.
But the attitude now is, I got nothing to learn from these old dinosaurs. What do they know?
I don't give a shit.
I like one of my favorite stories is Terry would run into one of the other morning men and a younger guy from an early from the current generation at Tim Hortons in the morning, and he wouldn't even turn around and say hi to you.
Oh, you were enemies because you were rival stations.
Well, we work in the same building. We weren't. I didn't and don't consider him a rival, but I thought it's weird he would stand right next to me and pretend I was Fog.
Does he know who you are?
Of course.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But this is someone who's enormously insecure.
But I want to say that I understand. Ted and I were talking about this on the way here yesterday. I said to him, I don't miss getting out of bed in the middle of the night, and I don't miss all of the machinations of the daily life of the corporate world, but I miss the microphone, and I miss having a place to tell my stories, and I'll do that here. So thank you.
And you know what? We should tell people so they know. iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Standing By, the podcast with Terry and Ted, is available everywhere, and on this very YouTube channel to catch the video.
Are we on YouTube?
Yeah.
Are we on the YouTube?
You're on the YouTube. You're everywhere.
We're on the tube of you.
People can listen to you in the car. They can watch. Some people in the car can watch it on YouTube so that they could commit themselves to an accident.
Just so you know, Tara, I'll probably get us banned from YouTube within the month. So enjoy it while you can.
If we're not banned yet, I think we'll be fine. Right? Yeah. We get a lot of letters of don't do this, messages from YouTube, but we don't care.
One of the things that I love about all of this is the great people here. They're so creative and it's great fun. And at the end of this table, you can't see it on camera, there's a giant bottle of booze there with
You know what?
To give you an idea.
I've been sober for 24 years, and it was a good run, but it's over. Way to go, Pantelis.
What do we got there, Ted?
Coureur de bois. It's delicious. This is like, what would you say? I guess I'd call it the Quebec Baileys.
Oh, yeah. Maple
syrup. Yeah, it's delicious.
Maple syrup.
Oh, you know.
Oh, wow. That's,
right?
You know what? It smells like Christmas.
Dude, it is something else.
Tabernacle.
Give me that.
Okay.
And you know what it goes well with? Coffee instead of cream.
Oh, I'll bet it does go good with coffee.
Yeah. Or straight out of the bottle.
Oh, boy.
Anyway, listen.
Look, decisions are about to be made.
Side, before you wrap this up, when we came to see you, I don't know, when did we come? In April or something?
Yeah, a couple months ago.
A while ago, yeah.
Before I stepped down, like you said, I was wound like a spring, and I didn't know which way was up, and I wasn't sleeping. This opportunity that you've not only given us, but you've also you're walking us through it and bringing your expertise and your viewership and your listeners and whatever you call them. Ted and I are deeply, deeply grateful to you and Mike Ward. So thank you.
Well, I'm telling you, Mike's not here, but I was with him in Quebec City.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for everything you've done on the radio for all this time, and we're just happy to have you guys around, and I think there's so much fun ahead of us.
I hope so.
A lot of success, and I think I can't wait. I think you're going to see new listeners, a younger generation that didn't get to live that. They don't know what real radio was.
Right.
That are going to get to enjoy you through this podcast.
Well, we haven't put Poseidon to sleep yet, and he's only 28, so I think that there's potential.
And his attention span, I mean, there's been studies. Science has studied it. Record low. Record low. But thank you guys for checking us out. All the links are in the description.
This prison cell, 'cause we can't trust ourselves.